I wonder why nobody don't like me. Or is it a fact that I'm ugly? I wonder why nobody don't like me. Or is it a fact that I'm ugly?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again to Black and White. I am your host, Dion. It's been a kind of crazy week, a lot of ups, a lot of really big downs. So I'm sure you all have had your nose in social media and in the news and everything, so I do not feel the need to rehash any of our current political situation, and I would like this podcast to become an escape. So we are just going to get on with things while ignoring the white supremacist uprising in the United States. So anyway, just a few notes up top before we get into the bulk of the episode. I would love if everybody would go into whatever service or app or website they are listening to this podcast on right now, give it a big ol' 5-star rating, review, a positive comment, anything that would sort of move it up in those podcast ranks and get it in front of more people's ears. I would super appreciate it. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please feel free to share it on your own. Post it on your Instagram stories, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, wherever the hell it is that you interact with your friends. The best way to pass along a podcast is through word of mouth recommendations. So I would super appreciate it if you were able to do that as well. And if you hate this podcast, just be quiet about it, okay? In addition, I am still taking questions and comments and calls for advice and topics that may end up being read aloud on the podcast through my email, which is wtf@dion.wtf. That's wtf@deon.wtf. Or you can go ahead and submit them through the contact page on my website, dion.wtf. I am sure you know how to spell all of that by now, and I would super appreciate it. Give me and my guests a little bit more of timely stuff to talk about. Anyways, let's get to the actual guest. I am so excited to share this conversation with you. So excited, in fact, that I ended up having to split this interview into 2 separate episodes, if you can believe it. I sat down a couple weeks back with Etcetera, one of the foremost drag performers in Australia and a winner, I am sure, of all sorts of accolades and things that I do not personally know. It was an amazing conversation. We got into every little corner of drag culture, diva worship, and our main topic of the day, which was creatures, cryptids, and creepy things in the United States and Australia. It was so much fun to put together. Please go give Etcetera a follow on everything that you can. She is an absolute delight. And let's go ahead and get into this first half of the episode. The second will be coming out on Wednesday. Talk to you guys soon. Podcast starts now. We are here with Etcetera. Thank you so much for joining me on my pod.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an intergalactic, international experience. I'm broadcasting live from Sydney, Australia, all the way over to where are you? Where are you located geographically?
I'm in Denver, Colorado, so stuck right in the middle, very much like a geographical opposite of Sydney. 0 beach, 0 sun. Well, there's plenty of sun. 0 fun, you know. So we are
all the sun, no fun.
Exactly. So yeah, my podcast is officially tri-coastal. We've had East Coast guests, West Coast guests, and Gold Coast guests. That is the Gold Coast, correct?
It's a bit south of the Gold Coast, but I mean,
okay.
That's close enough. I'm surprised that you knew about the Gold Coast.
I try to do my best. Hey, you know what? I worked at Starbucks. We had a type of coffee called Gold Coast. I asked where it was from. I did my research.
That's so good. Yeah. Sydney is it's kind of like East Coast, but it's basically halfway in between the top of Australia and the bottom of Australia. So we get really midway weather. It's not too hot. It's not too cold.
That sounds so lovely.
That's why everyone loves the weather here. Yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah, be prepared for me asking a bunch of dumb cultural questions, because I don't think I've had a huge amount of interaction with anybody from Australia or even New Zealand or Oceania, and so I love the people. I have so much to learn, though, so I'm going to probably say a bunch of dumb comments and ask for definitions of slang.
Oh, please do. I'll probably say things and you'll be like, what the fuck do you mean by that?
But I've gotten pretty good with context clues. I had a British
Okay,
boyfriend all the way throughout high school, so it was a lot of me just like picking up and trying to figure out what things meant, in those fraught family dinners.
That's good. That's good. At least you have some experience. Otherwise, this could be a translation nightmare.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and plow forward with the pod. Well, actually, first of all, let's talk for a second about who you are before we do your life story. So the reason why I wanted you on the pod is because, like, out of all of the Australian drag that's made it across my feeds, like, you, to me, look, first of all, booked completely down. You are running all over the place on the news, on television, everywhere, and are just like an unbelievable performer and are turning out looks and everything at the same time. So talk a little bit about what your drag is up to at the moment in Australia. What are your gigs? What is your usual brand? Talk about Etcetera, Etcetera.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think Etcetera is definitely, it's a character that came out of a lot of experimentation in, I think, the underground club scene here in Australia. So I was doing a lot of really weird club kid freaky drag and a lot of like day clubs and like weird art parties in a part of Sydney we call the Inner West here. Mm-hmm. And out of that, I kind of started refining ideas about performance and ideas about whether I could do this as a career. And it kind of morphed into this monster where I could actually take it to clubs and say, hey, I can perform for you. I'm actually not just someone that rolls around in a swimming pool full of tin spaghetti. I'm also a showgirl. I'm also a performer, and I have a lot of variation in what I can do. And I think that's the reason why I can work so much, is because I'm willing to do the underground arty gigs where I, get all messy and freaky and dirty, but I'll also stand up and do a classic ballad in a sequined gown, and big showgirl hair.
Yes.
And I think Sydney and Australia, the drag scene here has so many different sections. I found when I went to America last year and I went to LA, it seems like the sections of the drag scene were very like, you work here or you work here or you work here.
Each bar kind of has a genre.
Yeah, and it seemed very separate. Whereas in Sydney, things blend a lot more. Like you see people working all over the place, and so that's my shtick. I basically, I'm like, if I can invoice for it, I'll do it. So
that's amazing. A true businesswoman.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's my main source of income. It's my hustle, and I really do push forward in a way where I'm like, also to other queens, I'm like, you can turn this into a business, you can be a professional, you can make this into your living. So I'm the entertainment and marketing manager of one of the biggest clubs here, the Imperial Hotel, which is where they filmed scenes from Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Holy shit. Oh my god, yeah, well duh, that's your Priscilla show that I was seeing all over the summer lineup.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So that's my main place of work, and I work there like throughout the week. I'm doing bits and pieces, but I produce all the shows, I direct them, I run like that club's entertainment. And then I also host my own nights. I host a night at Universal, which is on Oxford Street, which is, I suppose, our main, like, it's where Sydney Mardi Gras happens. It's like our main club strip. And then I basically just split my time between corporate work and, little gigs here and there. I'm always really, really happy to work. And just if someone says, I have a gig for you for $150 and I'm already going to be in drag that night, I'm not going to turn it down.
Of course.
And I'll make it work for them, and I'll turn up and I'll do that. And I'm really a fan of working a lot in drag because I not only love being financially secure as a trans person, but I'm like, in my drag as well, I'm also like, I want to meet as many different people. I want to see different audiences. I want to expose my work to not just what happens at one club where I feel secure, but I want to walk into a random venue and have people who have never met me go, oh my gosh, that queen was great. And then it just expands, I suppose, people that have seen what I do.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm like overwhelmed. I am so glad that I am having you on, because like so you've just hit so many buttons as far as like as what I've been talking about and working on with drag. Like I love what you had to say about like recommending to other queens to like get busy and get involved in business and to book themselves and to like create livings out of it, because it's like that I do feel that is a big step that's missing in a lot of drag communities all over the place, is like is people I mean, there's the idea of a drag mother and a drag daughter, but there's not so much like stewardship as far as being like, hey, here's how you could also be successful in drag and trying to pass on those skills and everything. So I really admire that. And I definitely feel like, yeah, we have a totally kind of different situation, at least here in Denver. I think with American drag in general, because like you said, we're definitely quite a bit more segregated, like within the queer community. And I think one of the reasons I've attached to your drag so much is because like I am definitely somebody who like has the full on musical theater geek like showgirl side of everything, but I came up among like the punks and the people who were not being booked regularly or were only being booked at like the smaller dive bars in town. And so I think you can tell when like a showgirl and a more refined performer has that influence from earlier on of the punkier, dirtier sides of drag, and I think it creates a better performer for it, certainly.
Oh, definitely. It definitely has the layers within that performance. There's so many times where I'm performing and people say, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that," or "I didn't expect you to take that performance there," and it's because it's drawing on references that they don't have usually within their circle of artistry and performers that they've seen. And there's some amazing performers here in Sydney who do just the showgirl stick, and then that's their thing. But I prefer. I get bored if I just get up there every time and do a ballad. I have to like change things around and play with things because it's my art and it's my expression as well as much as it's my business on top of that.
I completely agree. Yeah, like it morphs over time along with it. No, that's just so exciting to hear. I love hearing everybody's like drag backgrounds, and it's cool when things match up like that. Speaking of backgrounds, let's go ahead and jump into this first segment. Familiarize myself with you personally as well as the rest of our audience. So the first segment of every episode is to tell your life story in 1 minute, and it's supposed to be incredibly hectic and high pressure. So feel free to just sort of go over important events from your childhood, family and school experiences, any sort of traumas that you can dig up on the pod within a minute, and basically just give us a slapstick image of etc. In 1 minute. Do you feel prepared?
I feel prepared. When you said bring up your traumas, I was like, do we have more than a minute? We can go through them.
We can definitely expand afterwards.
I will. I'm gonna pump through this minute. Let's go. I'm ready.
It's always shorter than you think. So I've got 1 minute on the clock. Ready, go.
I grew up in a town called Canberra, which is like in the center kind of like of the state that I live in. And it's like the political center, and it's full of like a lot of business people, and it's really boring. And I was like the weird, nerdy kind of queer arty kid. And so I didn't really have that many friends when I was growing up. I was really isolated. And then when I was 17, I moved to Sydney to go to film school. When I was in Canberra, I always had like a real artistic mindset, but I didn't do anything that was, I suppose, queer or drag related or anything to do with that. I didn't put on makeup until I turned 18 years old. And so when I moved to Sydney and I went to film school, I suddenly met all these amazing queer people that were introduced me to the world of drag and the world of, queer politics and all of these things. And I started being sucked into this world. And I suppose that's led me to the point where I am now. And I don't really ever go and visit Canberra, except if I go visit my family, because I'm like, I've moved on from that part of my life and I'm now in this new, fresh, exciting part of my life where I'm myself. Was that
lovely?
Was that and I feel like I worked more to the time limit than to the details, but I mean that's the gist of it.
That was perfect. Well, I was going to say that was a really beautifully contained 1 minute life story. It was almost as if you had it written out. That was perfect. You had a second to spare. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so Canberra, however the pronunciation adapts. That's what I always learned as the political center, yes, of Australia. But there's really not much of a queer culture there compared to Sydney.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to I know is Washington D.C. the capital of America? That's like the capital.
Yeah, that's our political center.
It's not like a culture capital like New York,
Right.
Sydney is like a culture capital like New York, and then Canberra is just where everything happens.
Gotcha.
So there's still stuff that happens there. There's still there's a queer scene and there's things that happen, but it's just not. It's not just a place where you can really push yourself to discover identity and stuff like that.
Right. That's actually, yeah, startlingly similar to Washington, D.C. I've spent a very small amount of time there, but I have talked to a lot of people who have worked there artistically, like in comedy and in drag and stuff, and it's very much, like, because our government turns over so quickly, like, literally the people who live in Washington, D.C. rotate, like, year to year,
Yeah.
so it very much does not have its own